My husband's coworker is hitting on me and I found out that it is because my husband is telling them that I am his sister, so I confronted him and his reason is very shameful. My husband started working at a large accounting firm about 3 years ago, and from what he tells me, he loves it there. He's made a lot of friends through his job and he goes out with them for drinks and social events quite often, and I've been totally okay with that. After what happened yesterday, it only just occurred to me that he has never actually asked me if I'd like to meet any of them, or go to one of his work events. I guess that's important context. Anyway, I'll start with what happened a few months ago, that I had brushed off until now. I was at a bar with some friends for a couple of Friday after work drinks, and a guy approached me. He was there with some friends, too. He looked slightly familiar but I hadn't met him before. He seemed friendly enough, and he asked me, my name, right? I think I must have just given him a confused look, because he followed up with, I'm Jake, I work with Josh. I realized that I recognized him from some photos on my husband's phone. This is where it gets a bit embarrassing. I'm a bit socially awkward and so I struggled to end the conversation, but he just kept talking at me. I guess he was already a couple of beers deep. But while he was talking, he said something like, it's great that you guys are still so close. I haven't talked to my brother in ages. At the time I was like, huh? But I just assumed he was drunk and not making sense, so I ignored it. He started to get a little flirty so I turned to my friends and we left shortly after that. I didn't say anything to them about it and it didn't seem like a big deal to me. I also decided not to tell my husband that I had met his coworker Jake. Not to hide it, but because I figured the guy wouldn't even remember talking to me, and I didn't want to make it awkward for Josh at work by telling him his colleague tried to hit on me. I just thought no harm no foul. But, yesterday morning, I was out walking our dog, Monty, and was on my way to my regular cafe, which is in town. I was waiting in line to order, and the guy in front was an older man. He got his coffee and turned around, but stopped and looked at my dog and goes, hello Monty. Monty was super excited to see him, apparently, and so I guessed that the guy was another colleague of Josh's, because Josh brings the dog to the office a couple of times a week. I thought it was sweet, to be honest, so I smiled at him and said hi. He introduced himself, but then he said something like, aren't you a good sister, walking his dog for him. I was so confused that I didn't even know how to react at first, so I stumbled on my words and just said it's my dog. I regret it but I genuinely couldn't bring myself to correct him and say that I'm Josh's wife and not his sister. It was just too awkward, and I just wanted to leave because I think was suddenly dawning on me what might have been going on. He asked me something about sharing a dog but I was able to escape the conversation by being next in line to order my coffee, and he left. I seriously don't know what to do, because what the fuck? Do I even ask my husband about this? Part of me is just assuming or hoping that it's a mistake, that he doesn't talk about me much at work and they assume we are related because we both have brown hair. But the thought that he has been telling his coworkers that I'm his sister makes my stomach churn. Update. On Saturday morning I woke up earlier than my husband. He was very hungover so he was like sleeping a rock. I decided to look through his phone properly while he was sleeping. I have been on his phone so often just pissing around on it that I had never thought to check anything very deeply. I checked all the expected things like Instagram DMs, Facebook Messenger, his iMessages, etc., and I didn't find anything that set off alarm bells to me. I saw he had a folder called Work, and so I looked in there, and he had a couple of Microsoft apps, Outlook, Authenticator, OneNote, etc., but he also had MS Teams. So I opened that up and had a look around. It did feel like I might have been breaking laws looking at his work messages but I obviously had to. Anyway, I was already upset to see that he had a bunch of one-on-one chats with several female coworkers, which, at first glance is obviously not an issue, because everyone works with people of the opposite gender and are required to communicate with them. But a couple of them were vaguely flirty, nothing I would call egregious, but there would be the occasional message between them with some playful innuendo or a wink emoji. These upset me, obviously, and they did send me into a bit of a spiral. But I didn't find anything that suggested he was having an out-and-out affair with any of them. Still, I followed someone's suggestion of screenshotting the messages and I airdropped them to myself. I still wanted some evidence of the lie, though, some proof of Josh telling someone that I was his sister directly. I go through his messages and search for keyword sister, so I searched for sis on his MS Teams, hoping to find results for both sister and sis. A bunch of messages from all hands group chats or one-on-one chats came up from other people, all unrelated and about their own sisters or whatever, but my heart dropped out my ass, lol. When I saw there was a direct message from Jake, the guy from the bar, to Josh from a Monday a few months ago. Jake's messages said, ran into your sis at the bar. On Friday she's single, right? And my husband had the gall to reply, nah, she's married. I was just in shock that he had the balls to tell this guy that I'm the one who is married because he doesn't want anyone having it on with me, but he is allowed to coyly flirt with every fucking woman in the office? Anyway, I kept going back through the search results on his MS Teams, and eventually I got as far back as 2-ish years ago, and I did in fact find a message from Josh himself to a group chat. It said, me and sis and Nusa Dua. I clicked on that and saw that he had sent it alongside a bunch of photos of him and I from our holiday to Bali. We went to Bali for our second anniversary. I thought he probably chose those photos because he's shirtless and had been working out so he looked hot in all of them. I was in tears seeing all of this, obviously. I took screenshots of those too and airdropped all of the screenshots to myself. I immediately took myself to my friend's house. I'll call her Sophie. I went to her place to cry it out and show her what I found, and she was extremely supportive and probably more furious than me. Lol. At around 1:30 p.m. I got a phone call from Josh, and I hung it up immediately. He sent me a few messages along the lines of, "Where are you, baby? I'm ordering food. Want some? And sad to not wake up next to you this morning." Sunday morning I woke up feeling more angry than sad, so I opened my phone and finally replied to his messages. "Coming home now, need to talk." I kept it cryptic to make him squirm, to be honest. I got home and he tried to hug me, but I refused him and we just stood in the kitchen. I did confront him. I just said, "Why have you been telling your coworkers I'm your sister?" He just said, "Huh?" This made me so angry. "How are you going to pretend to be stupid after 3 years of lying?" I basically said, "Don't play dumb. 2 of your coworkers have greeted me as your sister, and I have proof of you telling them. And I know you're pretending to be single." Essentially I asked him what he had to say for himself. He still played stupid. He became moderately defensive and just kept saying, "I don't know what you're talking about," or, "Why would I lie about you?" I cannot describe how furious I was at this point, but I was in tears, so he was trying to comfort me as if I was having some kind of irrational breakdown. I showed him the screenshot of his message saying me and sis, and I said something like, "You, tell me." He just said, "I don't know what I'm looking at, and I'm confused." I got so angry that I left again, and went back to Sophie's, because it felt like a dead-end road. At like 8:30-ish, he called me again and I did pick up. He basically asked for us to talk and he said he has some things to say, so I went back to our apartment. He had written out a bunch of stuff on a piece of paper as if he had prepared a speech and sat me down on the couch. He said that immediately after he started at his job, he realized the atmosphere was like a frat house. All of his team members were men in their 20s and 30s that were single and fuckboys. He noticed that the one guy in their team that was married would either get picked on, or essentially excluded from any and all social interactions. These guys were friendly and welcoming to Josh, and he admitted that he was desperate to fit in with them. He hated feeling like fresh meat, so he was scared that saying he was married would alienate him from his coworkers, and at first just never mentioned that he was married. He admitted that after one of his workmates saw a picture of him and I on his lock screen, they asked him who I was, and in a moment of panic, he said, "My sister." He was really apologetic at this point, and he was crying a lot. He couldn't even look at me. Anyway, he said that from then, he basically dug himself a deeper and deeper grave, because they kept grilling him about me and wanting to see more pictures of me. He said he had let it go on too long and that he didn't have the balls to admit to the lie. They would always bring me up and ask poop like, "Did you give her my number yet?" Or joke that they had slept with me, etc. He said he was really ashamed that he did that. He told me that he had never had an affair or even considered it, that the messages between him and his female colleagues were banter and that it was commonplace to talk to people like that in the office. He also said, he knows how disgusting it is and he is embarrassed to have been acting like a fuckboy. He concluded his speech by apologizing again and said that he was disgusted with himself and ashamed that he had lied for so long, but felt like he had trapped himself and that he couldn't find a way to get himself out of it. He said he knows he could have confessed the truth to either his coworkers or to me at any point but that he didn't because he was a coward. He said that he'll confess to his entire office that he lied and that I am his wife and not his sister if I want him to. He said that he will quit his job without a word if it would make me feel better, and that he hopes I can forgive him but he understands if I can't. Anyway, I couldn't really think of anything to say at that point. He went to lock himself in the bathroom, and I just sat on the couch crying. Anyway, I packed up a bag and went back to Sophie's, and I'm still at her place as I'm writing this. I told Josh that I needed time away from him to think about everything and whether or not I believe him, or whether I can ever trust him again. He told me to take as long as I needed and that he will still be there if or when I get back, he said, even if it takes a year.